What do you think is the most difficult Excel formula? Well, you might have lots of ideas. I've got a few ideas myself, but one really difficult one, and I think the most difficult one, is the equals frequency formula. Now, I've had my battles with this formula over the years. I completely avoided it for a while, and I gradually rebuilt my understanding on really simple concepts that we're going to look at in this video. Now, it's a real shame that a lot of people struggle with the frequency formula because applied correctly, it is super powerful, allows us to create these powerful, beautiful visual analyses, one of which we're going to have a look at in a second, and we're missing out on all of that. So if we can just get to know it a bit better, get us to a position where we can use it, we can start introducing those beautiful analyses into our work. Now let's get into the download file. The download file is available on the website to download. There's a link in the description below this video. What we're going to do is I've listed the most common issues in my experience that people have with the frequency formula. We're going to work through these issues one by one, build the formula step by step, and we're also going to look at a real life example, which I've got here in the solution sheet. This is a real life example and a great example of where we can apply the frequency formula. This particular example is from running. Now, followers of the channel will know that me and my brother do half marathons. My brother Steve is on the channel sometimes, and these times are actually from the Robin Hood half marathon in Nottingham in the UK in 2017. And my brother came to me and said, listen, how can we understand our own performance looking at this big data set? And immediately I thought we need frequency there. So let's get into the lecture, if you like. So firstly, we've got to be clear on the conceptual understanding. Now this is so important with Excel and Excel VBA. Often when people are having problems, and I've done it myself, people tend to think, oh, I can't get Excel to work, the coding's too complicated, the formula's too complicated. We've all been there many times. What I've found over the years is the problem usually isn't a technical problem, you know, with the formula building or something like that. It's often more of a conceptual problem. So is it clear in your own heads what you're trying to do? Can you speak it out loud? Can you describe it in your native language, what you're trying to do? If you can describe the formula in that way, you've got a strong conceptual understanding. You can then move on to the technical stuff. So let's build on this conceptual understanding. So what does it actually do, the frequency formula? I've got the frequency formula here. Just going to go into the formula editing mode, and we can immediately see in the prompts, Excel is asking for two things: a data array and a bins array. So array just means range. So a data array, we need a data set, and a certain type of data set, we need to have continuous numerical data. So what does that mean? Well, we need numbers and we want a range of different numbers. If you've got the same number, the same 2 or 3 numbers repeated lots of times, say 200, 300, 400 repeated lots of times, then that's not continuous data. That's more like discrete data, and you should be using a formula such as COUNTIF to analyze that. We've got continuous data, and you can see just looking at the nature of the data, we've got lots and lots of different times here. Some of these times are repeated, but most of them are not. How many entries have we got? We've got 6,000 entries there. So lots of entries and lots of different entries. So this is a continuous data set. This is a great opportunity to apply the frequency formula. So we've got our data set, continuous numerical data. And then we're looking at bins array. Now the concept of bins is so important in frequency. Excel is going to take the values in the data set and put them into one of the bins that we specify. With these bins, we're saying to Excel, in this bin, put all the values between 0 and 5. In this bin, put all the values between 5 and 10, etc., etc. The frequency formula tells us how many values are in each bin. So this is the concept of bins, so important for understanding the frequency formula. And we can see that from this table. So we're saying, okay, there's no entries below 1 hour, and we can quickly check that by looking at the data set. This data is sorted. Then there's 10 entries greater than 1 hour and less than or equal to 1 hour 15. And we can also test that just looking at the data set. How many entries have we got? And we've got those first 10 entries fall into this bin here. Now we'll talk in a second about how to define these bins, because that requires some really precise thinking. It's something that I always struggle with. But we can quickly translate this tabulated analysis. I'm on the graph sheet now in the file, into these nice visual analyses. And if you're struggling with the concept, looking at this kind of visual can really help you, because we can see the bins literally, visualized. If something can be literally visualized, I'm not sure if it can. We can see the bins visualized here. So we can just look here. Okay, so between 1 hour 45 and 2 hours, we've got 1413 values there. So super nice analysis. We can look at the data set, understand the dispersion, understand the central tendency there. So, where's the average around here? We can see the skew on the data. We can see this data is slightly skewed towards the front. So just with the frequency formula coupled with a chart, we've got this beautiful visual analysis that's really telling the story of this data set. So frequency can get us there. So that's the first point, really, the conceptual understanding. The second point, so the bins are not understood, not accurately defined. I'm going to go on to the explainer sheet, the second sheet in the file. I'm going to do a bit of work on this sheet and really dig into this concept of bins and try to understand. So in column D, we're going to build the frequency formula here. But before we do that, let's look at what's going on elsewhere. Now in column B, we have these single values. Now these single values are critical because they give the bounds, the limits of the bins. Now this is probably the most difficult thing to understand. It's a single value, but it's actually defining the start and the end of the bin by working with the other values. You'll see in column C, I've written out there, although it's actually a formula I think, but we've written there how Excel is understanding the ranges. But, critical points, but the frequency formula does not look at column C. The frequency formula only looks at the single values in column B and then makes the bin ranges from those single values. We'll see how it does that in a second. In column C, we've described how the ranges work. So this should be a useful sheet for really understanding this concept of bins. Now, these single values that we put in, we could describe these as upper bounds or upper limits. So values will fit into this bin if they're less than or equal to 0. Values will fit into this second bin if they're more than 0 and less than or equal to 5. And you can work down the whole table there. So Excel is actually looking at two values and putting a bin together. So it's doing all this in the background, which makes the frequency formula complicated, but also super powerful. You'll note at the bottom, we've got an empty cell here. So this cell is going to catch all of the values, should there be any, above the last value we put in the table there. So it's generally good practice to have this additional cell at the end. That's going to catch all the values. So let's get into building the formula. So hopefully you've understood bins now. So let's look at some issues with actually the practical stuff, actually putting the formula in. And this is where a lot of people struggle. So the first point is, once you've got the setup right, you've thought about the bins, you've got your additional row at the bottom there, you've got the setup right. The first step is to select all of the rows. This is not absolutely necessary, but makes things simpler. So let's select all of the rows first. And then we go equals frequency. I'm going to hit the tab key now on the Windows PC. That's going to put the formula in for me. And then Excel is asking, we're familiar with this now, it's saying, where's the data set? Where are the bins? Then I'll do the work for you. In this case, this is only kind of a learning example. So we've just got a single cell for the data array. Now, clearly in the real world, you would have more than a single cell, but this is just a simplified example that's going to help us understand. So we've got the data array in there. Now we have to remember to use absolute references. So I've hit the F4 key on the Windows PC. We can see the dollar signs have appeared there. Those references are absolute now, so wherever we copy this formula, those references will remain fixed. This is one of the common mistakes that we see. Then comma to move on to the next component of the formula. Then bins array. So Excel is saying, where have you specified the limits of the bins? And we know we've done that over here. I can just click over here and then select the range, including the blank cell at the bottom that's going to catch any big values. And then the same thing, absolute references, F4 key. And then we're moving towards having the formula complete. But we're not going to put it in yet because we've got one more thing to think about. So we've covered point 3. So enter the formula into all of the cells at the same time. Make sure you use absolute references. And then point 4, we've got to use a special entry technique for the formula. This adds to the mystique of the frequency formula, but because it's an array formula, we have to use Control, Shift and Enter to put the formula in. Let's not get into the technical stuff of why that is. I don't fully understand myself, but it's not really relevant. So we have to use Control, Shift and Enter when we put it in. So let's build the frequency formula here. So first we're going to select the whole range, hold down the Shift key on the Windows PC, selecting the whole range, equals frequency, a few letters, hit the Tab key, the data array, which we've discussed, single cell in this case, fix the references, comma, bins array, including the blank cell at the bottom, fix the references with the F4 key, and then for completeness, we're going to close the brackets, although you don't have to, Excel will do that for you automatically. And then the temptation is just to hit the Enter key, look at the formula with frequency, very important to be steady, step by step. Got to take a step back here and think, I need the special entry technique, which is Control, Shift and Enter. There we go. Now, if you've worked through all those technical steps successfully, the formula should be in now. We can talk a bit more about this example, which I think is really instructive. So we've got a value of 7.26 here, and frequency has slotted that value into row 7. And row 7, we've got an upper limit of 10, and Excel has worked with the row above to define this bin range of more than 5 and less than or equals to 10. And that's why the frequency formula has returned a value of 1 there. So this example is useful because if you hit the F9 key on the Windows PC, or you go to Formula, and then over on the right, just outside your screenshot, you can hit Calculate Now. In fact, I'll just show you how to do that. So we've got an option over here, Formulas, and then Calculate Now. Yeah, if you hit Calculate Now, what we're going to notice, you can just hit the F9 key. What you're going to notice is the value regenerates here, and then the frequency formula is working to slot the value into one of these rows. And we've got some conditional formatting there too to highlight the row to make it explicit where the formula is putting this particular value. So you can just sit there, hit the F9 key, and then try to understand how the formula is working, understand the bin ranges. We've got a value of -4 here, so the frequency formula can handle that because these are upper limits, and it's slotted it into the first row there. So spend a bit of time with this, hit the F9 key, look at this value and understand how it's being slotted into one of the particular rows. So hopefully that's the conceptual understanding and the technical bit about putting the formula in. Hopefully that's covered. A final thing, one thing that really causes frustration with the frequency formula is that it's difficult to tweak, it's difficult to amend. Now, we did mention the frequency formula is an array formula. So if we try to delete a single entry, then we're going to get this error message, which is you can't change part of an array because Excel understands these formulae as part of an array. We can't change part of that. You'll see this error message working with data tables as well, so it's not completely unfamiliar in Excel. In order to change the frequency formula, what I recommend to keep things clean is that you delete the whole thing and start again. If you select all the formulae, just hit the delete key, they're out of there now and you can start again. Okay, so we've covered our 5 common issues and approaches for fixing those issues and avoiding them in the first place. We've got our explainer sheet as well, so spend a bit of time with that. So we're going to go back to our practical example, and remember this is a real life example. We've got our data set here and we want to do an analysis on the data set. Just go to the graph sheet. We'd like to produce this nice visual analysis with the bins and the numbers indicating how many values are in those bins. Super cool analysis, fairly easy to do once you've mastered, or at least once you're pretty good with the frequency formula. So how do we go about that? Well, we've got to define our bins first. Remember, we need a column with single values in that the frequency formula is going to look at. And let's put these values into 15-minute intervals. So each bin's going to be 15 minutes wide, if you like. The values are going to drop in there. Now, your bins can be 5 minutes, 1 minute wide, an hour wide, if you like. There's lots of different configurations there. They don't need to be uniformly sized either, if that's going to be useful to you. Now, for the sake of keeping this video not too long, I think it's going to be over 20 minutes anyway, I'm going to steal the bins from the example. I don't recommend stealing bins in life, by the way, but in Excel we can get away with it. I'm going to steal the bins, Control V, paste special, and values. And we've got our bins in there. Formatting issue, Control C. I'll take this formatting, paste special, the formats, which is T. And there we go, we've got our bins there. So we've got to spend a bit of time setting up this formula, getting the right setup. If we spend that time at the beginning, it's going to save some problems going through. So we've got our bins here. Looking on the solution sheet, I can remind myself what these bins refer to, but I'm not going to copy in these values, but you can remind yourself there how these bins work. The basic idea is that these are upper limits for the data. So we've got our bins there. Let's start building the formula. So remember, I'm going to just get this all in your screenshot, go down a little bit. So we're going to select the whole range where we want these formulae to live. We're going to go all the way down, including this additional row at the bottom that's going to catch any large values. Then equals frequency, tab key. So the data array, where's the data? The data's right here. So I've just moved over there with the cursor, Control Shift and down cursor. And there we've got a data array selected. What do we have to remember to do at this point? Let's make it an absolute reference, a fixed reference, F4 key on the PC. I'm going to do that once more. Not quite sure what happened there. F4. Okay, there we go. And then moving on to the bins array. So Excel's saying, where are these bins that contain the limits for these bins that you want me to put the values into? Not a great explanation, but hopefully you've got the idea by now. So the bins array, we're going to go down to the bottom with the additional row there, hit the F4 key. So we've fixed the references. Going to close the bracket now, not absolutely necessary, but for completeness, given that this is a tutorial, we're going to put those in. And then Control Shift and Enter. So again, we've got to step back. You know, a key thing is really taking your time putting this formula in. If we just hit Enter now, it's not going to go into Excel properly. So Control Shift and Enter. And there we go. We've got all our values. And move down a little bit here, show you all of the values. Got all of our values there. Okay, it's going to change the formatting here. Change this to Arial, I think it is. There we go. So we've got our values there. Now, seems to be reasonable. We can see, yeah, there's more values in the bins in the middle. We know from the shape of the graph we've already looked at, the chart we've already looked at, that looks reasonable. But we want to do some tests. We don't just want to believe that it works. We want to do some tests. So what's a possible test we could do? Well, if this is working, then every value in the data set over here, every value in the data set should have dropped into, should be counted in one of the bins here. So if I add up all the values here, going to just do Alt plus on the PC to add up values immediately above the cell. If I add up all of these values, it should equal the size of the data set, if everything's okay. So we've got 6149 here. Going to just move across to a whole view. And then I'm going to count these values. So Control Shift down. And you can see at the bottom of Excel, it's a bit small, but you can see down at the bottom 6149. So I'm happy with that. So the amount of values, the number of values the frequency formula has counted is the same as the values in the data set. So I'm happy with that. Let's just switch back to the normal view. So that seems to be working well. What other tests can we do? Well, how about just taking a single time and then changing it? So it works the same way as in the explainer as on the explainer sheet, we have a single value here. Let's take a single value and then change it and see if it's being processed properly. So this seems to make sense. This value is between 1 hour and 1 hour 15. These are upper limits. So the frequency formula has put it in row 10. That seems to make sense. What if we went 1 hour 44 here? Okay, 1 hour 44. Yeah, that's between 1 hour 30 and 1 hour 45. Let's do 2 hours 44, final test. And that's gone into the row here. Okay, so just by testing a single value there, I've been able to quickly understand if the formula is working. I'm going to undo this, Control Z, and get our data set back. Good. So we've put the formula in. We've done some testing, so I'm happy that it's working now. Final step is to get this beautiful visual analysis, which we can see on this page here. Now I've done a bit of formatting on this chart. We're not going to go through the formatting, but you can kind of play with that yourself, getting it looking as good as you want it to look. I'm going to switch back to the data sheet here. Okay, so how do we get this chart? We're going to select the data and then go to the top here. We're going to go Insert, and then let's go for a column chart here, something like this. Okay, here we go. Now for some reason it's given me times on this axis, must be to do with the formatting of the cells. To avoid that, let's just go to the whole screen view so you can see what I'm doing. To avoid that, I'm going to right click on the axis, go to Format Axis, and then down at number down at the bottom here. You see it's got custom in here. Just change that to general, and then we have values, which is exactly what we want. Let's switch the view back to the best view. Good, and this seems to be working well. I've got series 1, series 2 there. Okay, it's not quite what we want actually. It's actually put 2 series in here. So let's go to select data. And this series 2, or is it, no, series 1 I actually want to delete, because series 2 is orange. That's the one I want to retain. So series 1, let's remove series. Okay, let's go back there. Took out the wrong series, Control Z to go back. Okay, I'm going to have to rebuild this chart quickly. Hey, it's all good stuff. So if you've come this far, hopefully you won't mind a little bit of chart rebuilding to get it displaying well. Okay, here's the chart. Let's resolve this issue with the formatting again. Just going to right click, Format Axis, then just outside of your screenshot I'm changing number to the number category to general, and that's all right. And we've still got our 2 series here. I think last time I deleted the wrong series, so I'm going to go select data, and then series 1 is the one we want to remove. So I'm going to hit remove now, and again we haven't quite got what we want there. So let's edit series 1. What values have we got in series 1? Okay, bear with me a second. To be honest, I'm going to keep this in the video because I spend a lot of time doing this, trying to get things to work. And let's see if we can just edit series 1. Gone to select data. So series 1 values, the values, column C. So series values should be here. There we go. Okay, I'm going to try again. You know, so you can see this. I'm going to switch to the whole screen view. Apologies, this is not as fluent as I wanted it to be at the end. But as I said, I think it's educational to see what doing Excel development is like. A lot of the time, it's just trying to get things to work. I'm going to edit this series now. So the values, I'm just going to put these values, type these values in if you like. So the values are in column D. And just pop in D here. That seems to be right. Okay, just hit OK here. Okay, and that looks reasonable now. Apart from these, the x-axis labels, we could say, we want to change these to the time. So the axis label range is going to be here. There we go. And now we can hit enter, and OK. It's going to delete the series thing at the bottom. There we go. Now you can continue, playing with the formatting, like for example, formatting the x-axis there to get it displaying right, so that you can see all of the times here, just by altering the sizes of the areas allocated to the axis labels, etc., etc. You'll be able to do that. Also worth bearing in mind with charts, if you go to chart tools at the top, then looking at these auto formatting options, some of these can be nice and can set you off in the right direction when it comes to formatting the chart. Anyway, just going back to our original view, we've got to our chart, so we've got a nice visual analysis here. So that's it really. We had some problems with the chart at the end, but we worked through those. And this is the frequency formula. So let's go back to our 5 common issues. The concept's not understood. You've got to understand the data set, what kind of data you need, continuous numerical data, and you've got to understand the concept of bins. And Excel's going to drop these values into the bins and count the number of values in each bins. The definition of the bins. So we need this single column with values in, and these are effectively upper limits. To understand how the bins work, come to this sheet and just hit the F9 key, change the values, see where they're slotting in. Now we've got to remember 2 things when we're putting the formula in. So we've got to select all of the cells when we do the formula entry, select all of the cells, and then we've also got to remember to use absolute references. This is the easiest way to do it, and also to do the Control Shift and Enter when we put the formula in. Then finally, bear in mind that it's difficult to edit a single formula. We're going to get this error message, so try to get it right to begin with. If not, it's probably best to delete all the formulae and then to get started again. Okay, so there we go. So some common issues with the frequency formula there and how to work through them. Now, as I said at the beginning, I went on my journey with the frequency formula, avoided it for a bit, and then gradually rebuilt my understanding. And this is how I did it, just taking small concepts, understanding them, and now I've got to a situation where I can use it as a powerful tool in my work. Also looked at how to put a chart together, some of the issues in editing a chart and getting it to display, but I'm going to leave that in the video because that's what it's like working with Excel, and you can see how I work through those. So that's the frequency formula. I hope that you'll be able to use it in your work. Let me know in the comments how you get on, and wish you the best of luck with your Excel learning. I'd love to see you in another video on the channel. Take care.